Peter M. Gideon, the eccentric apple breeder. Peter Miller Gideon was born on February 9, 1818, to parents George and Elizabeth Gideon. Peter spent the vast majority of his childhood in central Ohio till 1841, when he moved to Clinton, Illinois, where he would meet his future wife, Wealthy Hull. He and Wealthy married on January 2, 1849. In 1853, once again did Peter Gideon and his new wife, Wealthy Hull, move to Minnesota due to Gideon's unknown health issues. Arriving in Excelsior, Minnesota, on the south shore of Lake Minnetonka, he quickly claimed 160 acres of land. After arriving in 1854, he planted 350 apple trees, 50 pear, cherry, quincy, and English plum trees. Throughout this time, he continued to plant seeds while watching them be killed by disease and cold. While Gideon had no formal education, he was completely self-taught in both horticulture and plant breeding. In 1860, American author Horace Greeley said this about growing apples in Minnesota: "Never move to Minnesota. You can't grow apples there." Hearing this now sounds absurd, but at the time, it was very true. Not to mention, Horace Greeley was a very well-respected man, and no one had a reason to doubt him. During these 6-7 years, Peter Gideon struggled while he watched his apple trees succumb to the cold over and over again. But in 1860 to 1861 is when his fortunes would finally change. While he may have had success in this time, it certainly did not come easily. Later that year, all but one of Gideon's trees had died. He was given a choice: buy a coat for the upcoming winter, or use the last $8 to his name to buy more seeds from a man in Bangor, Maine. He chose the apple seeds, and the union of his last tree, a Siberian crabapple, and the seeds from Maine became the Wealthy apple. He named this new apple after his wife, Wealthy Hull, and to survive the winter, he crudely sewed together 2 vests and a pair of pants. In 1868 is when the true success of the Wealthy apple came. It is because it was the first full-sized apple able to survive the harsh Minnesota winters. At the time, the Wealthy apple was far superior to any other apple on the market, and Gideon continued to improve the Wealthy apple for the rest of his life. The reason the Wealthy was such a big deal is because at the time there was a huge push for Russian seeds and seedlings, but they were susceptible to fire blight, and many thought they were of poor quality. Getting an apple able to survive the winter proved Minnesota was a viable apple growing state. In late 1868, Gideon met with the Minnesota State Horticultural Society, although he was not even a member. The Minnesota State Horticultural Society also made Gideon the superintendent of their state experimental fruit farm, which was established on March 8, 1878. The farm was 116 acres and right next to his own farm. This farm was overseen by the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. Peter Gideon continued running this farm as well as his own until his death on October 27, 1899, at the age of 81. After the death of Peter Gideon and the dismantling and selling of the experimental fruit farm, some from the University of Minnesota tried and succeeded to defame Gideon. They did this by claiming that he was not the breeder of the Wealthy apple and that they were. They used the fact that their 2 farms were adjacent and that Gideon worked for them to slander him. Only recently has the truth of who the real breeder of the Wealthy apple is been discovered.